You're tuned in to Getting to the Root of It, focusing on healing and letting go of the wounds of addiction and other unresolved traumas of the past. Your breakthrough begins with you. Are you ready to change your life? Stay tuned as your host, expert therapist, personal development coach, and spiritual cheerleader, Natashah Khan, inspires you to live the life you were destined to live.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Getting to the Root of It. This is your host, Natashah Khan. So excited to have you guys here today as I have a very special guest that I have only known a very short space of time, but there are not enough words to describe how our meeting and our encounter has been so divine. And in the short space of time that we've met each other, this young woman has just been so inspirational, encouraging, motivating. I'm going to leave it up to her to tell you a little bit of how we met and how our relationship and friendship has definitely taken flight. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Miss Portia Booker. She is a producer. She does so many other things, but that's something else I will leave for her to introduce you and tell you a little bit more about what she does out here in the world. But she's truly making a difference, impacting others, changing lives, and she always has a smile on her face. It is one of the things that I love about her so much, no matter what she's enduring and what you will hear in her story today. It just blows my mind that she always finds that the time or find herself just smiling despite the odds. Our topic and focus today, guys, is all about grief and loss. So many of you out there that have reached out to me have shared with me, whether it was a result of COVID and having lost a loved one, and or they were diagnosed with some terminal illness and you've recently lost them. Many have lost family members for years and they continue to grieve and they continue to struggle to function in life again. I asked Portia to come on the show because she recently lost her mom and she has also endured some other things over the years. So I've asked her to come and share her story with us and to be able to share with us her, not just her experience, but what is she doing today to be able to help her through this grieving process? Because as we all know, it's very important to not just grieve, but understand why we're grieving, and at some point be able to learn how to manage our lives again so that we are able to function and keep moving forward with, as I always say, being able to move forward with the purpose that God has called you for. All right. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Miss Portia.
Natashah, thank you so much for inviting me on here. I don't know why you let this Jacqueline in the box and you don't know what you're going to get come on your show, but okay, we're going to roll with it. First of all, so for those of you who don't know me, I am Portia Booker, is known as Portia the producer. I am your host and executive producer of Groove with Portia talk radio show and podcast. I'm also stepping into the audiobook space. I'm a mental health advocate, photographer, Jacqueline of all trades, like what I mentioned, and Natashah even said it too. And I want to piggyback on what you said, Natashah. This smile that you see on my face every day was not always a thing. I was one of those people who could not see the opportunity within adversity. For me, whenever adversity would literally be the hammer and I'm the nail nailing me to the cross of life, I couldn't see a way out. I couldn't see the opportunity within that. And so for me to be able to stand here and smile despite what I went through just recently with my mom, despite all the things that I've went through, from being suicidal, diagnosed with depression, anxiety, bipolar, all the things, and being on a cocktail of medicine, I still stand here and smile today because I don't believe that God put me through what he did for me to just exist. I believe that there is a message within my mess of life, and I'm able to turn my trials into a triumphant moment to help somebody else stop their dreams, goals, and aspirations from making the graveyard richer.
Well, amen, man. Just in a few minutes of this conversation, you're dropping the mic already. I think there's so many people out there, and including myself, I can relate to that. You know, I've been through so much in life, and sometimes it's really, really difficult to see the positive or to find the positive in those dark places, or to see the light in those dark places. So I commend you a great deal because it's not easy, and one of the things I can say for those viewers out there, listeners out there, the smile that you put on is not a fake smile. It's not this mask. Most oftentimes people will wear this mask and pretend that everything is okay, but deep down inside, they're still hurting. I can tell by all the conversations that we have that smile is genuine, and it just shows me how much work that you're doing on yourself. And again, that understanding of what God has called you for, despite the things that you've gone through. But I guess let me correct that. I shouldn't even say despite what you've gone through, because I'm coming to learn in my own as well. I needed to go through those things, as I'm sure you needed to experience those things, in order, like you said, for us to be able to have a message out of all of that mess, right? And one of the beautiful blessings for me is that God gifted me this podcast and an opportunity to be able to bring women like you onto the show, to be able to give others, men and women alike, young children, just the hope and the faith and the trust, and knowing that no matter what you're going through in life, it's not over. And you don't have to stay there, right? We have an opportunity to learn from the experience, grow from the experience, and ultimately choose whether or not we want to stay there or not. So would love for you to just, everyone who's listening out there, sit back and relax, because I want Portia to take the opportunity to just kind of tell you where it all started for her. You talked a little bit about bipolar, because that is something that, people are being diagnosed with every day. Many people are, not treated for it. So if you want to share us starting from that point in your life and just kind of bringing us to present day, and you being the amazing soul that you are.
Natashah, I got to say, when I look back on my journey, and it's been recent, 2016 was the highlight reel of my life. When I tell you I had it all, I had it all. I mean, from attending one of the top journalism schools in the world, to traveling abroad, to landing a once-in-a-lifetime internship with PBS. When I tell you I had it all, I had it all. To even landing my dream job in the television world. I was a TV producer. And what people didn't see, Natashah, what we often see in social media today is everybody's highlight reel. You don't see the crying nights. You don't see the suicidal thoughts. You don't see the suicidal attempts. You don't see the depression. You don't see when you're isolating yourself from people because you're so ashamed of what you're going through that you feel as though you literally have to stifle yourself in order to appear normal. You don't see all the medications that you're taking to make yourself feel as though you're a part of a crowd, when really you're watching your own life from a bird's eye view and you're wondering, what the heck are you doing? So 2016, October of 2016, I embarked on my new journey of pursuing my career, being a television producer in a brand new state, brand new city. Everything was new. You know how that goes. You're young, 20 fun. I'll just say that, 20 fun. You're about to go and meet new people, experience new culture, all the things, right? All of the greatness that was in front of me. Didn't realize that that dream that I was living would soon become a nightmare in a short period of time. I noticed within the first 2 or 3 weeks at my new position. Now, mind you, I worked overnight, y'all. I don't know how much people know about the television world, but your shift determines your social life. So I worked 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Sunday through Thursday. And I literally only had like 1.5 days off. So I'm already in a mental space that most people probably on a normal, regular routine would not be, because I'm sleeping during the day and I'm up all night. So within that first 2 weeks, while I'm really excited about my new role, going in, meeting my new coworkers, first thing I noticed while I'm trying to type up my scripts, the show, I'm sure everybody remembers Charlie Brown. Remember the teacher that went womp, womp, womp? That's literally what I was hearing in my head. Womp, womp, womp. want. I'm like, what is going on here? Why am I not understanding what I'm typing? Why does everything not click? It's like, you put one good battery and one dead battery in a bunny and it's not going to run right. It'll run for 2 seconds, but then it dies because the other battery is dependent upon the one with the most juice. And that's literally what was happening to me. So during that period of time, that was the first sign. That was the very first sign, was the misunderstanding, not being able to function at work. Then, of course, that's going to bleed into frustration and anger. So I'm literally lashing out at my coworkers sometimes unintentionally because of all the changes, right? I've moved out of state. I'm over 1,000 miles away from my main nucleus support system. So, of course, that's going to bring on some anxiety. That's going to bring on some sadness. Like, did I make the right choice? Should I stay? Should I have gone? All the things. So I'm already overthinking.
And I think that's important to highlight, right? I think a lot of times we lose sight of what you just said, is that it's all fun to move and to try something new and to do different things, but we've often failed to recognize the value behind a support system and recognizing that while those things are exciting, there's still change. And the average individual is not a fan. I'm going to speak for myself. I mean, I'm better at it now as I've gotten older, but I am not a fan of change. Right? I didn't like that change, even though it was exciting. It still did something to me mentally and emotionally. So here you are explaining all these little changes that sound really exciting and new, but there's all these little changes that are happening. And at the same time, you're moving away from a support system. So anything that mentally, emotionally could potentially occur, as I'm sure you're about to tell us, your support system is now not there for you to lean on.
Yeah. And trust me, that you don't realize how crucial a support system is. That's like your buoy out in the ocean to keep you afloat when the storms are raging, when the water's tumultuous and all that stuff. And not having them close. I mean, I talk to my mom every day on the phone. That was an unwritten agreement that me and my mom had, where I had to call her every single day, which that helped me a lot. But not having my close friends around, not being able to go out with them when I wanted to, or call them up, because while they're at work, I'm asleep. And while I'm up, they're asleep. So it's that night and day paradigm that you don't think about. And I will say, I was grateful that my ex was the only person who I could talk to at night, because at the time he was in another country. So he was on a different time zone. So when I'm up, he was up. So I will say I was grateful to have him during some of those very, very dark moments. And so what eventually happened, Natashah, I lost it. I literally just lost it. One day, when I tell you all of the milk cartons, like when you hear a banshee scream, just exploded, that's exactly what happened. Everything just came crumpling down. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I'm thankful still that one of the producers in the newsroom pulled me to the side and said, hey, I know it's none of my business, but I think you should go see somebody. I think maybe you're having a hard time adjusting, and maybe they can guide you towards some resources of some sort. Because by that time, Natashah, I was put on a PIP because I wasn't able to meet the performance goals at the job and in the role that I occupied. So when I went to go see this psychiatrist, which I still laugh at this to this day, because one of my friends said, Portia, they literally read you the advertisement on the back of one of the drugs that they put you on. Now, I'll be honest, Natashah, I've been on every single mental health drug you can think of. Latuda, Wellbutrin, Effexor, Abilify. I've been on them all. Trust me, I've had the cocktail, and let me tell you, that wasn't even worth it. I would have rather have sat in the sun all day and got darker than dealt with that, but that's for a whole nother day. and so once they diagnosed, she's like, by the way, you have bipolar disorder. And I said, bipolar disorder, is that the same thing as being bisexual? Now, mind you, I grew up in a household where we didn't talk about mental health. Sure. So when you hear that term, I'm just going to go to the very first thing, like, oh, is that the same as this? What does this mean? No, she blatantly told me, Natashah, your brain is broken. I said, wow. So my brain is broken and I've made it all this far in my life having a broken brain. Awesome. Okay. This doesn't sound right. But of course, when you're in a state of panic, you're on the verge of losing your apartment, your car, your job. What do? We cling for dear life onto a source, whether we know it or not. Sure. We think in our mind that it's the next best thing to save us, our saving grace. But really, for me, that was the downfall right there, because I'm afraid, I'm anxious, like, oh my God, I'm going to lose everything that I worked hard for. Then, of course, I come from a strong line of women, and that strong Black woman cape connotation is a negative one that's often passed down from grandmas, moms, etc. And don't get me wrong, I think a lot of our ancestors who are women of color that wore that cape, it got them through that time. But as times change, it's the trickle down effect. Sure. Eventually, things are going to get watered down where we're not able to hold the weight of the world on our shoulders 24/7, and we're not supposed to.
It's a lot of pressure. That cape is heavy because it's not like you're getting a brand new cape and starting new. You're carrying all of that strength and all of the good and the bad and the ugly on that cape as it is passed down to you. So there's a lot of pressure there. I wanted to just add very quickly before you move forward, that moment where you're being told that your brain is broken. Boy, oh boy, do I, and my viewers know this, my listeners know this, that I do not like when people are labeled and when people are tagged. Now, when you talk about walking away from that experience and tapping into sources, this is where we start to seek people, places, and things. And so for many of my listeners who've listened to previous podcasts of mine, talking about addiction, talking about dependency issues, right? You are being told that your brain is broken. You're going through all of these changes. You're filled with fear, shame. You're just overwhelmed with all these different types of emotions, helplessness, hopelessness, powerlessness. And this is an example of what addiction is about. Addiction is both mental health and substance use. There are some individuals that will seek mind and mood altering substances or food or sex or money, as you spoke of, that source, in order to cope, because I don't want to say it's the only thing, but it's what they know in the moment, that they're just looking for that immediate relief to feel better, right?
Oh, tenfold, yeah.
And or now, I know you're going to speak about the mental health part of this, where now some of us get stuck in that mental thought process, and now we are beginning to believe, am I broken? So I'll pass that back over to you so you can tell us more about that.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. When we start seeking exterior comforts, we instantly become literally a prisoner right then and there, because instead of us going internal within ourselves and really realizing the reality, like I mentioned, brand new state, brand new job, away from my immediate nucleus support system. So all the things that are in front of me that, of course, I'm not thinking about at that time, that are a part of all the transitions in my life currently. And once she put me on this cocktail of meds, that's, like I said again, where I literally made my bed, because I went from a size 16 in pants all the way to a 9. So I lost 40 pounds in under 60 days. I was sleeping literally all day, didn't have a social life, depressed because I couldn't relate to people, all my coworkers. And of course, I hate to say this, but newsrooms are very catty. News travels around just like it travels around the world. It travels the same way like rats in a sewer in a newsroom amongst coworkers. I hate to say it, but it does. And it happens a lot, but I digress there. And so literally that was the turning point. And I might get a little emotional still saying this story, but you figure I'm already been labeled, like you said, that my brain is broken. My coworkers at the time didn't make me feel as though I was welcome. And a part of that was because, again, they don't realize the transitions. It's business as usual. So we just need you to get the job done. We truly don't care how you feel, what's going on. We just want the job done. So we've got that going on. Then I'm already just feeling all sorts of not like myself because I'm a social butterfly. I love being around people, but now I'm forced to isolate in many different facets. And I remember this was the last straw. This was the last straw. I went into work and I was already feeling worthless. I was already feeling degraded. I mean, after having scripts thrown in my face, being yelled at in the newsroom, I said, is this really worth it? And you know, Natashah, I'll say this really quick trigger warning. When somebody is ready to commit suicide, when they know that it's the end, there's that euphoria that comes through where you're like, yes, the pain is going to stop. It's going to stop. So I come into the newsroom and I don't know who peed in this person's Cheerios to say that day where I was the one who they were going to lash out at. And I don't remember what I did. I think maybe I misspelled a word in the script. It was something minute where they just blew up at me in front of the whole newsroom.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe, one, that I was humiliated like that. Two, that people took the bystander syndrome and literally just watched it happen and nobody said anything. Three, all of my childhood traumas that had been suppressed resurfaced. So I like to call it, Natashah, it's like when you watch horror movies and the killer has the knife. Mm-hmm. So mind you, it's like I have 3 different knives placed in front of my face. So I've got being bullied, I've got being publicly humiliated, and I've already got that thought of I'm broken. So you've got all 3 of those gavels in front of my face. So of course it's like being a bird in a cage. Either a bird in a cage is going to scream and try to get out, or a bird in a cage is going to shut down. Yep. And I did both in that same moment. I got up from my desk. I went to the dressing room and I just cried. Like bawled my eyes out. But then through that cry was that silver lining of, that's it. Today's the last day. So after my shift ended, I got in my car, drove down Riverside Drive, and I made a stop at the river, the Arkansas River. And there's a bridge there. And I literally parked my car and I was texting one of my close friends at the time. She's also one of my soul moms too. And I don't remember what I said to her, but literally I was standing on that bridge when she called my phone. She said, Portia, you take your black A to that hospital now. And best believe I listened. I got down from there, got in my car. I didn't even realize she called the hospital to make sure I went there too. She was on it like flies on fresh trash. She was on it. And
that was God, one of God's angels here on earth, knowing exactly where to be and what you needed to do in that moment. And you were obedient to that.
Tenfold. And when I got there to the hospital, which it was close to my house. I wasn't far from it. I'd say I'm maybe 5-10 minutes from there because all the main streets are very easy to get to and that. So when I got there, I checked in and all that. And when I was sitting on the bed, I told myself there has to be more to Portia's life than this. There has to be more than just existing, getting yelled at, doing this for a living. There's more to it. And that's when the only thing, Natashah, that died that day in March of 2017 was me living the life that other people wanted me to live. That's when I took the author pen back and became Portia, the author of her life.
And producer.
The producer part came later, but it's the same concept. It was letting go of that identity. And that was a struggle in itself because believe it or not, I got to share this other part too. So after I left from the hospital, which was around 9:00 in the morning, I went home, went to bed, and still went to work that night because I told the hospital not to admit me. I was afraid of them admitting me. I was terrified. I know some people would be like, oh yeah, admit me. Hecky no. I cannot be admitted. I will be like a bird in a cage. I will find a way to pull Shawshank Redemption and get out. But I was not, no, I still went to work. And that night when I went to work, I cleaned my desk. And I'd say 2 or 3 days later, I quit on the spot. I didn't look back, and I just remember the day. Still, when I still envision it today, the sky was a color blue that I've never seen before. And it symbolized to me a new beginning.
So I have to ask the question, and I thank God and praise God for this woman that called you. Are you able for our listeners just to, in that moment prior to that phone call, do you recall your mindset and where you were in that moment prior to that phone? And what made you answer that call? And the reason why I asked you that question, throughout my 25-year career in working in mental health, I have experienced individuals taking their lives. I'm also a survivor of attempting suicide, but there's many people who have not been successful in, surviving. So is there a defined moment prior to the call? Like what prompted you to take that call? Or do you just believe that that was just God's miracle right there in that moment?
Stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break.
Hey stranger, you new here? Well, so am I. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Portia Booker, is known as Portia the Producer, and I'm your host and executive producer of Guru Portia talk radio show and podcast. So what exactly is Guru Portia? Guru Portia is a platform that I created for individuals to find their groove and share how they overcame adversity and found an opportunity. You can catch a new episode of Guru Portia every Monday and Wednesday on any major podcast platform. So, question for you. Are you ready to go from a breakdown to a breakthrough? Well, if you're ready to get started, let's dive in.
So is there a defined moment prior to the call? Like what prompted you to take that call? Or do you just believe that that was just God's miracle right there in that moment?
I can tell you while I was driving, that euphoria of the pain is about to stop. And also the shame. I didn't want my family to know what happened. So mind you, again, that strong Black woman cape, I couldn't face my family with them knowing I moved all the way here and I failed, that I couldn't stay afloat when in their mind. And then again, it's that inner critic of us that can be our worst enemy, setting that high expectation that didn't need to be set from the very beginning. And I just felt as though I could not face my family. So for me, it'd be easier for them to have a mystery than for them to find me, or this didn't work and I'd have to live to tell the tale, to say the least.
Got it.
And what made me answer, she never calls me. And the fact that she was at work at the time and her job is pretty demanding. Now it's not, I don't think, but then it was, where she really could not call me. And I don't remember exactly what I told her. I think I said something on the lines of the end is near. Something on the lines of that. And she picked up on it. And that's when she called me. And she talked me down. You just never know how somebody hearing you. Literally, she heard me through whatever I said in that text message. Nobody else who I texted that day heard that. She read between the lines. And sometimes we have to be more proactive in that and notice when something seems off. And I'm grateful.
Well, I think it's important to, she didn't just hear you that day, she listened, right? I believe there's a huge difference between the two. So you can say something and people hear you, but people aren't actively listening.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared a little secret with you when I was a little girl. It's the one thing that I always wanted for others, is to grow up and be able to be that listening ear. Because right along with you growing up in my life, and then part of my own story with my attempt at suicide, is it seemed like no one cared. No one was listening. What you had to say was not of value. Everyone else was more highly opinionated, and their opinions mattered. And so it was like, you get to that place of, so what, what's the point? And I'm just in awe right now of that moment for you. And I wish and pray for that for so many other people out there that may be sick and struggling today. Move us forward and thank you so much for just sharing experience. And thank you, God, because I'm so glad to have met you, and I'm so glad that you are still here with us. And clearly, with both of us having had that experience and being here today, that definitely is not a coincidence for us to be able to share this part of our journey together. Move us forward, because I heard you mention your mom. And so during this time in your life, you've lost a lot. And it sounds like this point with this woman who has asked you to go to the hospital, she gets you off at that bridge. There's this turning point, right? Where's your mom in all of this once she finds out about what has happened? Or how long does it take before mom finds out? Because I know you were close with your mom.
And this is going to sound terrible, Natashah, but my mother didn't know about any of this. And part of that is because I was ashamed. Again, it was that shame, it was that guilt, that I came from a strong lineage of women, that I felt as though I had to continue to rise on that pedestal of holding that standard. And to say the least, obviously my mom knows now because she's transitioned from earth, but at that time I could not tell her. I could not tell her because at one point, Natashah, I had tried to tell her when I was severely depressed when I was in high school. And the only thing I was truly met with was, you better take your depressed A somewhere else. Now, mind you, I always recall in my mind, now that I'm a lot wiser, that our parents were raised by victims. We've all been raised by victims. And my mom responded in the way that she knew best. She still loved me, but she wasn't able to handle that, which is okay. Because again, we grew up in a household that was very religious. You consult the Bible for all of your wants, needs, and answers. But again, prayer without works is dead. So how can I really consult a book when I don't even understand the foundation of religion? I don't even understand the foundation of how God works, whatever God looks like in each and every one of our lives.
And I think it's important, we have to consider a factor, cultural and generally generational beliefs, right? During, I know in my culture and where I'm from in the Caribbean, you're depressed, get up and go to work. Exactly. Right? And that's not to fault or blame anybody. You don't know. I always say you don't know what you don't know. Right. So unfortunately, at that time in your life, here's a child crying out for help, and this parent just doesn't know. And unfortunately, that's sort of the response, that you get. But this is one of the reasons why I want to continue to do shows like this, to raise awareness, because I want the individuals out there who don't know and don't understand the depth and the severity of mental illness and substance use disorder, that they can begin to be more active listeners in the lives of the people that they love, so that they can learn how to respond.
Oh, yeah. And my mom, eventually, I think my mom did find out when I really started prioritizing my mental wellness and going to therapy, and then doing more mental health advocacy, and then also with the birth of Grew with Portia. Grew with Portia came about in 2019 as a way for me to, one, build my self-confidence, and two, share my mental health journey in order to encourage more people to open up about it, have dialogue, and really take priority in it. And my mom, I'm grateful. My mom still was my cheerleader, hands down, she still is. And she actually came last year when I was a guest speaker for the NAMI walk here in Cleveland, Ohio. My mom came and watched me speak. She heard kind of like my little 2-minute, 30-second speech around how I was able to learn how to convert my anxiety and depression and pain into purpose.
Amen.
And it's when I think, Natashah, about where I am today, even though now my mom, my main squeeze, has transitioned, this grief journey that I'm currently occupying, truthfully, and this is going to sound weird to some people, but it was the best earthquake that could have happened in my life. Same thing when my television career ended. That breakdown I had was my breakthrough to get to here. And even with my mom, even though currently it's only 2 months in that my mom transitioned, and it still to this day doesn't feel real all the way. But I think because of what I went through in the past and the wisdom that I've carried over these last couple years of really investing in understanding myself and my mental wellness is what keeps me afloat in that support system. I'm back with my main nucleus support system and more to help me, to guide me, and to let me know that it's okay what you're going through. You don't have to wear that strong cape anymore. You're allowed to be vulnerable. And I tell people all the time, the power of vulnerability is a wonderful thing, because to me, if I wasn't vulnerable, I wouldn't have garnered so many rich relationships. Amen. I wouldn't have become the person who I am today, where I'm able to share my story and wear it raw on my sleeve. I mean, literally, I make jokes about wearing my underwear outside of my pants when I went to work one time, but that's for a whole nother day. But it's true. It's this, but it's the same concept. I mean, being vulnerable and sharing the messiness of my life has converted into a message for the masses. I mean, I have to, I guess, share this now. I would have never produced my first book that will be out at the end of this month, at the end of September. So my audio book is titled Finding Grace Within Grief, Her Transition, My Transformation. And I truly believe that grief is like the open door effect, right? When one door closes, many other doors open. But I think we get imprisoned by the loss of what is not here, where we're not able to see all of what is still present and prevalent in our life. And even me, I knew, and I'm going to get emotional for a minute, I knew even before my mom transitioned, I knew I was going to be okay. I knew that her love still held a strong stake in my heart. And even though I miss her, I'm grateful for the legacy and the love that she gave to everybody, including her children. And her strength, the role model that I had for my mother on this earth was profound. Because I knew in order to be a strong person in this world, I would have needed another strong person to follow behind.
Can amen to that. And can I add to that, that every strong woman out there, every strong person out there endures suffering, right? Yep. And they need to be, or part of the requirement of being strong is to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. I think we live in a society sometimes that believes that if I have to be strong, then I can't be suffering, and I can't be, I can't have, I'm not supposed to be in pain, and I shouldn't show my vulnerability because that means that I'm weak. And in my own experiences and my own journey in recovery, I came to learn the opposite, because I grew up that way. I grew up seeing my mother and all the women in my family, very strong women, never really understanding what they had to go through and what they had to endure. So, of course, from my perspective as a child, it's, you never see them cry. You never see that weakness. You never see that vulnerability. So you don't understand that there's a lot more that comes behind all of that strength that they have. And not just, I'm not speaking in the physical sense, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And that's one of the things that I want our listeners today to understand. There is a lot of strength in you quote unquote being, what people like to say weak, but I like to say it's vulnerable. I've come to learn in my relationship with a higher power and with God, as I understand him, that's when I seek him. Because when I think I'm strong, when I think that I got it all under control, when I believe that I'm the one that can handle everything and take care of everything, I don't seek help. I don't seek my support system. I don't seek my mentors. Definitely don't seek God. So I believe it's a gift to see your strength, your weaknesses, and vulnerabilities all in the same line, right? They're all in the same line, and it's all needed because it's all the parts of you. I don't believe anybody is perfect, and no one can be strong all the time. One of the things that I teach my daughters is I am human, and what you're sharing with us is you're human. Despite this beautiful career and all these beautiful things and blessings that you've been given in life, you're still human. And I think our society is lacking I don't want to say portrayal, but they're lacking this sense of just being real and raw, right? So you have flaws. So you're not perfect. So you're struggling today. Okay, you're not immune. None of us are immune, right? We all have ups. We all have downs. We all have in-betweens. So, and I can talk about that forever, but you said that, and it just inspired me to remind our listeners that it's okay to be vulnerable. To me, that's where you're going to get your strength, and that's where your success is going to come from, is just being your authentic self.
Tenfold. And in the society, Natashah, that we live in a world where we're unable to see two parallels, or like what my soul mom calls a duality, where we are unable to see the bad. We can only see the good. Everything has to be perfect, Scotch tape special. No. Our whole life is not a highlight reel. It's not the McDonald's line analogy, and grief works that way. Grief, we live in a society where we're not able to grieve. Everybody thinks you're supposed to be back to normal, back to business tomorrow, or you can cry boohoo today, but you can't be vulnerable tomorrow. You better get up, come to work, show up, get the job done. And I'm thankful, knock on wood, that when my mom transitioned, I was an entrepreneur. I'm thankful that I've been in the entrepreneurship space for over a year. And that gave me the time to really focus, go within. It gave me the space with my support system, my coaches, my mentors, my friends, my family. And it also gave me the space to think, what next? Instead of falling into that pattern, like you mentioned in the beginning, of addiction, of becoming a workaholic or substance, or seeking exterior comforts that really are a prison sentence for you. And I want to share this really quick. I know you had mentioned in the beginning about how we came to meet. And I know that everything is divine. Everything that happens to us, whether it's a person we meet, an event that occurs, everything happens for a reason. And I remember the day after my mom passed, the sky was a color pink it was the same color pink of the robe she had on the very next morning after my mom passed. And I said, I want to do this grief journey different. I don't want to do it the same way when I left the television industry. And I said, God, guide me to whoever or whatever you need me to go, who will help me process this, where I don't become a prisoner again. And the very next week, here you come strolling through. And in my mind, I said, oh, this person would be a fantastic guest on my show. But then when we were talking, and I said, wait a minute, hold the front door wide open and just let all the feral cats in. I said, help. The help is here. And I recognized it. And how many times, we've talked about this before, where the man at sea is asking God for help,
Yeah.
But yet he ends up drowning because all the help that was sent to him, it wasn't in his idea of what help was supposed to be.
His expectations. He had his own perception of he wanted God bodily to come down and help him. You know what I mean? So he lost sight of what that help looks like and how it comes in so many different forms.
Yeah. And I was thankful that I recognized it right off the bat, like the little kids who you put the little fishing pole on their head and they're chasing the hot dog. See, I'm the one that you put it on my head and I'll just grab the hot dog and eat it. So instead of chasing it, but how many people chase that hot dog for help and they never find it? They end up falling in a pool of water and getting eaten by piranhas and all this other stuff. I know I can go on like a whole twirly whirl here, but I'm thankful that I recognized when my prayer was answered. It wasn't in the form that I expected. I let go of all expectations because I didn't know what it was going to look like. But when I let go of that expectation, that's when the doors of opportunity opened for me to gracefully move through this process. Like I have my moments, I have my days, but I can honestly say I'm not crippled. And that was my fear of being crippled by grief the way so many people unintentionally become, because the loss of that person, the loss of that job, that loss of identity, right? Sure. Because you're not only grieving the loss of the physicality of whatever it may be, but you're also grieving the loss of a portion of your identity associated with that. Like, yeah, I'll always be my mom's daughter. I'll always be that little patchy squirrel that she gave birth to, which she probably shouldn't have, but that's a hope for another day because I'm a menace to society sometimes, but that's okay. But even with my television job, when I let go of that identity of wanting to be a producer so bad, my prayers were answered a few years later, where now I'm the executive producer of my own show, which is doing very well, internationally known. And I'm also producing other people's shows to help them because that was my dream. So you never know how letting go can be that segue or catalyst to land you where you need to go. And I think grief works the exact same way. I believe grief is for us to learn how to let go of the ideologies, the expectations, the imprisonment of the strong Black woman, the societal prescription narrative that if you're diagnosed with bipolar, your brain is broken. If you're diagnosed with depression, you can't get out of bed. It's letting go of all of those things and starting fresh. It's like being reborn as a phoenix if you're open to seeing it.
100%. And, you know, one of the things that when working with clients is I help them understand is that we grow up believing that our identity is in all of those things that you just mentioned, right? I remembered at the age of 31, prior to hitting my bottom, just before hitting my bottom and finding a path into recovery, you know, I was asked, who am I? And I would always answer the question, well, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, you know, I'm a coworker, I'm somebody's best friend, I'm somebody's daughter. And they're like, no, that's not who you are. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I'm like, yeah, that's who I am. They're like, no, that's what you've defined yourself to be based on these roles that are placed here in society. They're like, that's a role. That's not who Natashah really is. And I remember getting so angry with this individual for asking me this question. But when I came into sobriety and as I worked through Alcoholics Anonymous and seeing a therapist, etc., I came to really understand what that meant. That I was seeking or identifying myself based on all these different roles and things out there in the world. Same like you said earlier, we are constantly, without recognizing it, we are constantly looking outside of ourselves in order to find that inner peace. And I have come to believe, I've come to experience and see that it's those of us who've been through hell and back, for those of us who come near death and back, can be able to help people understand, stop looking outside of yourself to discover ultimately who you are and who God has called you to be. And I know hearing that, people will just think that, oh, Natashah, you're crazy. You don't understand. Portia and I are here to tell you that we understand. I get it. I used to be the girl of this world. And I used to, if I lost a job, a piece of me was lost. When I lost custody of my children, that role of being a mother, that part of me was lost. Like, I endured loss constantly in my life, that I began to believe, is this what my life is going to be? My life is going to be all about constantly losing? Until when I got sober and I stepped into recovery, what you just said. And I believe wholeheartedly that a power greater than myself restored me to sanity, and my higher power placed it upon me and gave me the eyes to see and revealed to me the understanding of what it means to look within myself and to seek him in order to discover who Natashah really was, or who she is today. And that's why I do what I do today, because I want to be able to have other people to have that opportunity. Because the last 12 years of my sobriety has truly been a gift. It has truly been golden and a blessing, because I'm no longer trying to seek outside of myself to get that wholeness, fulfillment, and peace. So I know that I kind of went off on a tangent there for a second, but that really just struck something in me I wanted to share with our listeners. Can you, as we wrap this up today, is in terms of your process, can you kind of maybe give our listeners some to-dos? What are some things that you've done? I mean, it's only been 2 months, Portia, that you've lost your mom. And my deepest condolences to you. But I've spoken with you and I've watched you, and I know the sort of inner workings of your day-to-day and what you have to deal with and the different emotions you go through. Are you able to or willing to just share with our listeners just what some of those days look like? And then when you're having a hard day, what is it, what tools are you using to help you manage through your grief?
One, again, I want to thank you, Natashah, for inviting me on and, being able to share this journey that I've been on, this healing journey. And now I'm in this grief process. But grief is a process, but it's not permanent. Let me say that again. Grief is a process, but it's not permanent. It's only permanent if you allow yourself to stay in it, but it is not permanent. What helps me, Natashah, I start off every day. And even my mentors say this, start off every day with gratitude. People see me on my Facebook stories and my Instagram stories. You see that I'm writing in my gratitude journal, whether it's 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. I am actually up, y'all. This patchy squirrel is up. I'm not pre-recording nothing. I am up. I start off my day with gratitude. Next thing that I do is I read my daily Bible verse to give me some food for thought to focus on the higher power. The next thing I do, step number 3, I write a letter every morning to God. And I'm honest about how I feel. Hey, God, I'm not too happy today. No, this is how I literally start off my letters to God. Hey, God, it's Portia again. Remember me? I'm not too happy today. And I have an honest conversation. You have to be honest. That's where it starts, is that honesty boat. If you're not ready to be honest, you ain't ready to heal. Let me say that again. If you ain't ready to be honest, you ain't ready to heal. And I had to overcome that veil of, oh, I have to hide from the higher power. My great grandmother said it best. What can you do that God can't do? And if anything, he already knows what I'm about to say. Why am I trying to hide under the veil of illusion when he literally just pulled that back? Like, I see what you're wearing. I see what you're doing. I see that hexadecimal face that you're on. Again, you have to be honest. On the hard days, what I find myself doing, self-care. I have a self-care SOP in my phone, which stands for Standard Operating Procedures. And in my self-care book, I have different activities that I can do within an hour's time of my day that will bring me back to life. So whether it's wood burning, taking a walk with the dog, taking myself out of the house for an hour, whether it's for an hour drive out to the lake or wherever, phoning a friend, texting somebody, watching funny memes, whatever it is, You have to carve out that time and really include self-care daily when you're in a grief process. I think you should do it regardless. The other thing I do on the hard days is I write. I really heavily divulge because the emotions are so heavy, and I cry. I give myself permission to cry because I was one of those people who felt crying was a weakness. And I grew up with all boys. So of course, if you get hit in the stomach playing football, or get a finger jam when you're playing basketball, or get hit in the face with the kickball, you gotta suck it up. But as I grew older, and I don't want to say older, as I grew wiser, I had to realize that stifling those tears was increasing my suffering. So I had to let it flow like water. When you feel it coming, don't stifle it. Let it out. Because you have to, because literally those emotions will start to affect you physically. Like my heart will start pounding really heavy. I'll start to sweat. I feel like I can't breathe. Like, you have to let it out. Your body is telling you, listen to me. Hear me. I'm crying. Hear me.
Feel your feelings, right? Yeah. Whatever that feeling is, not just sadness. Even if you're angry, a lot of clients will say to me, I was raised to, not to show my anger. Some show it a little more than they need to. Others, don't show it at all. But the message here is feel your feelings. Because what you just said is, at the end of the day, that is what, when we hold on to it and we store that in our body, that increases the emotional stress levels within us. Those emotional stress levels will then contribute to medical conditions. It will contribute to exacerbating mental health conditions and or substance use disorders and so many other issues that are out there today. So, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you're feeling your feelings. What else, Portia? Anything else? Any last minute words, a message of hope to those that are sick and suffering out there today? What would you like to leave our listeners with today?
One, I want to say meditate. Take time every day to sit in silence. Close your eyes for 5 minutes, set a timer, because that'll help to ground you and set your focus for the day. Last thing I will say, everything in our life happens for a reason. You can either be a victim of your circumstance or find a way to become victorious over anything, because we are resilient people. We don't have to wear the strong person cape every single day, and vulnerability is our greatest strength.
Amen. Amen. Oh, I'm just so blessed, so honored. Thank you, God, for just allowing our paths to cross. Thank you, Miss Gail Flowers, for introducing us. I can't remember a time when I just bonded spiritually and connected with someone in such a short space of time. Yourself, Angela Lewis, and Reverend Pat, let me tell you, boy, you ladies are truly divine and truly a gift from God. And I just want to say thank you so much for being on this show. Portia, can you, if someone wanted to talk to you more about this, your grief process, or maybe they're grieving today, or maybe listen, if there's somebody out there listening today that may be having suicidal ideation or even contemplating the thought of not wanting to be here anymore, and you just need someone to listen to, Portia, is there a way that these individuals out there that are listening can reach out to you?
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram at Portia_hugs, HUGS. I'm also on Facebook, Portia Booker, PortiaBooker. Also on LinkedIn. I'm also at the email address, journalistpab@gmail.com. So I'm everywhere. I mean, if you just Google my name, you'll be able to find me. I mean, literally, if you Google Portia Booker, I am known in the world somewhere in the galaxy interwebs. So
and your name is not a common name. So I don't think, unlike my name, when you pull up my first, my name, believe it or not, there's a lot of me out there around the world. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening today and tuning in. Also, if anyone would also like to continue a conversation with myself about my own experiences with suicide and or overcoming grief and just learning to live the life that we've been called to live, I can be reached at empoweredvoices45@gmail.com. Again, this is Natashah Khan, and we're signing off today. Please, I look forward to you guys tuning in to our next episode. Be blessed. Hi, my name's Natashah Khan. I am a personal development coach. I am a published author, motivational speaker, and I'm here with an opportunity for you today. Do you ever sometimes feel sort of stuck, not really sure where you're heading in life, or looking back on your life and thinking, I didn't quite always accomplish the things that I wanted? Do you struggle with fear and/or anxiety, or you worry all the time? Or maybe you find yourself constantly giving to everyone else, but never really taking time to give to yourself. Or maybe you identify as a codependent and you realize that it's time for you to stop giving so much of yourself to everyone else and to stop and take time to give back to you. Well, you've come to the right place. On Monday evenings from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I host a group that is a private group, so it's invitation only, to members who come together to begin to support each other, lift each other up, inspire each other, and learn the tools necessary on how to find their freedom, how to empower their voices, speak their truth, and discover their authentic selves. So if this sounds like something that you're interested in, you are welcome to reach out to me via email at empoweredvoices45@gmail.com. Again, that is empoweredvoices45@gmail.com. If you are looking to change your life, you are looking to transform and live the life that you've been destined to live, please